Nick, appreciate you hopping on today. Dear one to my heart, basketball, media doesn't get much better than that. So excited to dive into some of these insights and touch on. Are you guys calling it Forever Network? You calling it Basketball Forever? Or I guess before we even start, give us
Yeah,
the
I mean,
breakdown of that.
firstly good to be on. We were connected a little while ago. I think that it's not probably not many people in the space who understand what we do better than you. So nice to get on and talk chat about hoops and other sports that we're looking at the moment. I think to answer your first question, the parent company of the business is Forever Network Inc., which is now a US entity started in Australia, but we were always known as Basketball Forever, and probably, I guess, at least affectionately, will always be known as that. That was our baby, and that was our main vertical that sort of, I guess, launched us into the mainstream and got most of our initial traction. But we now do have handles and coverage of all the four major US sports, and we're about to launch soccer and golf as well. So Forever Network is probably what we're going to have to start calling it as the parent of those kids. But yeah, Basketball Forever has been the love child for the last 10 years.
Yeah. So how's that start? Australia, you guys crank up the Instagram account and get rolling, or give
Yeah.
us the evolution and really the origin days and the idea that you saw and the opportunity you saw to where it is today.
Yeah. So, I mean, our CEO, who was the one who actually originally registered the business and founded the account and got the handle and opened the Facebook account back in 2012 originally. I mean, the business was actually formulated so we could operate properly in 2015, so coming up on 10 years. But I think that if you speak to him about it, he was always very passionate. He worked at basically like a digital ad and media startup in Australia that did quite well. And then he realized he was a big basketball fan, loved sport, loved sports media, as I did. That was also where my background was, more on the traditional broadcast side back home. But we realized that I think a lot of sports media was very web property focused. It was all editorial. It was all written pieces. It was, a sole arbiter. Basically, you would go to an event. You would either do a piece to camera, you would broadcast it, or you would go and write a live update or a postscript of what happened in those days' events, and then that was disseminated. So, very web property focused, not very visual, not very storytelling, bound to single languages in a lot of cases. We knew that given we're from Australia and basketball now is the most participated sport in the country. There was a huge groundswell in Southeast Asia, places like the Philippines where that's their lifeblood. We knew basketball had global appeal, and we saw an opportunity to go in and build something that was very sort of like strikingly and recognizably visual. The goal for us was to make a narrative or a story be captured within a square Instagram picture or video. So the idea was that it didn't matter what language you spoke or where you were or what your background was, you could consume the same way as the person on the other side of the world. So very visual, very native, very illustrative, and we've now been able to sort of, I guess, fashion this identity in the space, and people will now know. You'll see a graphic and you'll know it's from us. That's just been a lot of legwork over the last 10 years. So that's how it all started.
Very cool. Now, from a monetization standpoint, a lot of people that haven't built anything in the media space don't realize that there's a lag. Like it takes a little bit of time. Even if you have a video rip off or you start getting some followers, it doesn't come overnight. It takes time. When did you start seeing, oh, like, okay, this is a cool little project, but now this is, you guys just raised, was it 5 million? I mean, it's come a long way, right? What was the origin and then the first, I guess, call it signs of success and on the monetization side, and then also how you think about the current business model.
Yeah, the lag is definitely real. I mean, it was essentially minimum wage for Alex when he was running the business for the first, call it 4 years, I would say. It was a small team that worked very hard, but there's not a lot of cash there. There's a lot of media players and not a lot of advertising dollars. So once we got to a state of probably, I guess, significant global relevance, but especially in Australia, where we've been, the number one social brand now there for 6 years straight, bigger than all the sports there, all the big industry bodies. That was when we probably started getting some traction on brand deals and ad revenue and programmatic stuff. being able to convert eyeballs into actual dollars. But that was probably but that was probably a legitimate 4 year stretch where it was pennies essentially. But I think once you get it, you can start ramping quite quickly, and a lot of that comes back to the value that you do actually deliver for brands. So we've been very lucky in the sense that we get quite deep in the weeds in the way we integrate content. We're very smart in the way we connect with audiences. And so a lot of the businesses that we do work with, the secret sauce in media is to turn that initial revenue into recurring revenue. So if you can do that, then you're onto a winner, I think, in this space. The way we think about it now, and there's a couple of different ways that we do monetize. I mean, one has been, I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but moving the business from Australia to the US has been a big win for us from a revenue standpoint. Q1 this year was our best quarter of revenue on record in the business's history, and I think a lot of that just comes down to the fact that North America, it's our biggest audience segment. We previously weren't monetizing it that well, and all the bodies were back home. Now we have a sort of dedicated team here, which is helpful. But I think secondly, as well, is as we expand into new sports, and we continue to build out the product that we've been working on for the last almost 2 years now, which will launch ahead of next NBA season as a real money gaming option. I think that's where you probably start to see, I guess, like a real bang for your buck and like reaping rewards for the hard work we've done. So that's, I guess, how we look at monetization. But you are right; it can be a pretty difficult journey through the first few years.
From entering the US, we'll touch on it now. What excites you about the US? We hear a lot of people, especially, I mean, I don't know how much other people talk to people over the globe about sports, but for me, it seems like every day. And there's always in the back of everyone's mind outside the US, like, the US market, we got to penetrate at some point and somehow. How did you look at it as this next opportunity? And then how are you actually pursuing it to, go have your best quarter in company history while it's also your first, like, I believe it was your first quarter in the US even anyway, which is, case in point.
Yeah, I think the big win for us was that we reach, in any given month, we reach anywhere from sort of 40 to 50 million uniques in North America. And obviously the US is the lion's share of that 95% sort of numbers. So we had a groundswell here, and we had eyeballs that we knew we could go and essentially the key is to sort of like go and tell the narrative to the right people. And we sort of actually flipped it a little bit on that. I think a lot of people come over to the US because they see, if we're talking about media in particular, they see bigger advertising dollars. They see obviously more sports to cover. They see bigger spend and more eyeballs. But they come over with a level of sort of like, I guess there's a trepidation, right? There's a worry about, okay, well, is the way we sell the business here different from the way we sell it here? We sort of went the other way and got quite aggressive with it. We knew that we could go and pitch to these businesses and say, look, we've got essentially fertile ground that hasn't been touched yet. You're sort of like first ones in the door. And that's struck a lot of chords, and we've been able to deliver really good results for those first groups that we have folded into our sort of like advertising set. So I think on the US side, the reason why a lot of businesses want to get over here is, as I touched on, it's from a business standpoint, the ad dollar is worth about 5x what it is in Australia,
Well,
which is pretty ridiculous. It's a sort of monumental difference from a company standpoint. But then secondly, I think, you played basketball at a high level, you understand that the way that the US does sport is completely unlike almost anywhere else in the world. I think European soccer can put their hand up and sort of lay claim to being a rival from a fandom experience and a pure sort of like energy and narrative standpoint. And then there's pockets around the world with cricket that probably capture a little bit of that. But the US, from a 12-month media cycle, not just what happens on the court, but off the court, means that your actual canvas to go and build and monetize and be creative is, completely unrivaled from the way that we think about it.
now, when you think about your new product, so obviously you're entering the US, you're getting better advertising dollars. That's a win. So you're already growing the company with the new market. You're talking about new sports. Where's the idea for this new product come in? Where's this idea? We got to, add other revenue streams, or, where did you see that opportunity to build this, next product? And again, I don't know how much you can go into it, but obviously then you saw another idea off the media.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to answer that question. I think the first is purely from the business standpoint. Like, COVID was quite a scary time, I think, for a lot of media businesses. Like, we were 80% down probably, I would say, during COVID. No one
Really?
was spending. No, there was no sport being played. Right, you're a
Mm,
sports media company that's covering a product that doesn't exist in those years. So that was tough, and I think that part of, I guess, innovation is born out of stress. And so when Passport was repealed in the US and we started seeing, the groundswells of new opportunities on the real money gaming side and the betting side and, microtransaction pieces, we thought that there was a good opportunity for us to go and take the knowledge that we had from an industry standpoint, to go and capitalize on what we'd learned about how fans engage with content, engage with sort of acquisition loops, and build out our own sort of. At the moment, it's like a fantasy offering, but with new unique game modes. And we thought the other really compelling thing that we had that a lot of these big businesses have is, FanDuel and DK and Prize Picks are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, up to $1 billion a quarter, to acquire and then sort of reacquire the same churning users, and it becomes impossible for small players without a level of competitive advantage to actually get involved, which is, from my opinion, bad. Like from an industry standpoint, you don't really want a giant that sort of controls the pace. You want innovation, you want
mm,
competition. And what we have is a huge audience of eyeballs, not just here but globally, who we can acquire with multiple different touch points at very, very low cost. So it directly combats the issue that the industry faces around user acquisition and spend. So we sort of combine those two things. Australians are, rightly or wrongly, the biggest gamblers in the world. We,
mm-hmm.
per GDP or per capita, we are the biggest, and we've been betting on mobile phones since we were kids, essentially. So we know what works. We know games that we like. We know loops that work. We feel like we had a good grip on that. And so we launched a beta of a non-real money or sort of free-to-play pick'em offering that we'd built it's almost 2 years ago now. That had a lot of success in its beta test and beta form. And then more recently, we launched a couple of new game products. One of them is like a live action bingo offering, which is dynamic player prop based in a 5x5 grid. And then we're about to launch a game called Streaker, which is live action predictive. And they've all been free to play to start, but when we do launch those with real money offerings, there'll be interesting loops around microtransactions, freemium access to different game modes, stuff like that, which we think is a really interesting alternative to what's out there. And we've got sort of six figures in terms of players on the wait list for that. We've got about 45, 50,000 who are actually sort of beta testing it as we speak, with really nice results.
So add a new product, expand to the US, raise some money. How do you think about this internally? Right, you have a smaller team doing this. Now it's like, okay, well, now there's a lot more going on. We got to
Yeah.
build more team. How did you go about internally? Now also add into the team itself.
It's kind of like herding sheep, right? Like it's like a farmer who has to look at a different thing every day. There's a lot of fires that need to be put out. It's definitely exciting, but there's very, very little downtime, I would say. There's a lot of it's more so trying to manage. Like you go from being pure media, you get into a really nice cadence of output and production. Everyone knows their sort of lane to swim in. You have your video guys, you have your podcast people, so on and so forth. Then all of a sudden, you're essentially trying to basically build and scale two new businesses at the same time on top of that with the new sports you've got plus product. So
Mm.
there's been some really good learnings, and it's we're very grateful for like the investors and advisors that we've got that have sort of navigated some of these currents before, particularly coming over here. But I like to look at it as just a good opportunity, right? The ethos is that you just have to work quickly and work fast, and if things aren't working, kill them, and don't be afraid to kill your babies, as they say in the industry. But aside from that, I mean, it's been the most fun I've had in a work environment, since I started. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
And how do you see the? I know you talked about it a little bit, especially building the your next product that's coming out in beta. How do you view the advantages of media? Like, we'll actually put it both sides. Like, do you see having media? Like, what are some of the advantages of having that? Like, take away the money side of it, just of what it can bring, but also are there any disadvantages as well to having
yeah.
that?
I think so. I mean, look, like whether you like it or not, the more that you advertise product, the more you advertise anything, it can lead to like churn in audience.
Mm.
A lot of people, or not, maybe not right now, but the overwhelming majority of people, as it currently stands, like to consume sports content, nothing else. They don't want to be told to do anything. They don't want to be told to go and, transact or buy, or how it is.
Mm.
Advertising works like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a definite, like, there's a line to be towed, I would say, in the way that you also pitch it from a narrative standpoint, the way you integrate it into your content slate. So it's not pushy, it's organic, it's something that actually adds to your experience of being in that ecosystem rather than just logo slapping an ad, which I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our competitors make the mistake of. It's understanding like audience psychology is really not trivial. It's something that we've had to sort of learn over an extended period of time. So the advantage we have is those learnings. We have a wealth of data and 10 years of history and interacting with people in the same way that we're doing it right now. So we know what they like and what they don't want to see. And I think that's an advantage that we've got over a lot of these players. But the biggest one is going back to what we were talking about before, which is I think there's going to be a graveyard of really interesting product and tech teams and businesses over the next sort of 12 to 24 months who, like I said, just cannot get over the hump because they cannot compete from a spend standpoint. It's this is the most expensive industry in America to acquire users. It's more expensive than life insurance. It's more expensive than car insurance. Like when you think about that, it's like a monumental gap to be closed for a lot of these guys. And I think that now that we've done a lot of work over time to build up good rapport with the people we have in our ecosystem, we've earned the brownie points to be able to go and say, okay, like it's our turn to, we've given you guys this incredible content for free over a long period of time. You still get that in exchange. Like we now have these new games that you can go and play, free to play or monetized. You go play them if you like it, stick around. If not, no issue. Come back and be a member of the ecosystem who's not touching that. And that I think he has struck a chord with our audience. It's not too pushy. So on the media side, every conference you go and sit in and listen to right now, everything is around content and content led acquisition. The affiliate model is sort of breaking a little bit at the seams. I think. With there's concerns around shaving, there's concerns around a couple of other things, and ultimately we're in a place where there's one or two big players who probably are going to end up just being the giants, and then there's sort of small fish swimming in different ponds around them. So that's an interesting one that we're trying to push against as well.
Yeah, and touch deeper a little bit on the content led acquisition versus the affiliate, and even if you have some numbers, just for people that don't quite understand that. But I know at least betting, I have no clue what it's at now, but at one point, it was in the couple hundred of dollars. There's companies purely built off just affiliate models to betting companies.
Yeah.
And then now I think you're talking a little bit more about you have your own podcast, your own internal media to use content to acquire customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, the old school affiliate model, which is purely, hey, sign up using this offer. If I convert you, I get paid and they get their business. Like you said, the amount that these bookies are spending to media outlets, influencers, whoever it might be, that number is reducing. It's getting smaller and smaller for a number of reasons. One is, as we're talking about on the CAC side, a lot of these companies are feeling some top-down pressure to actually strip out some of this OpEx. Like, okay, it's been fun to go and get as many people as we can in the door. How do we turn this into an actually like profitable business? Because pretty much none of these businesses are profitable. They're still spending a lot more than they're earning. So that's one side of it. But the second is there's a natural law of diminishing returns. Once I give you a user, I can never monetize them, right? I have no long tail revenue. Sportsbooks aren't paying like a 20% clip of that user back to me on their bet. It's like on their bets, it's purely transactional. So it's not great for us, and it's also not great for the books because I don't want to then go and do more work to give you people. So my effort, my energy levels drop. So the relationship doesn't really work. That's where content-led plays, I think, are really good because naturally, if incentives are aligned, your content is going to have touch points at all angles. It's going to be done in a way, as we were talking about, that's more organic. It's more product-led. It's got more of a focus on the user's experience. It's more like almost a customer service relationship where we actually care about the person on the other side, right? It's not purely just like a, okay, handshake agreement, cash goes in, cash goes out situation. And then obviously if you have control over your content and then you have control over how the users are consuming it, you're able to go and make like iterative decisions to tweak it, move it in different directions based off what you're actually reading from your people. So the the ability to make smarter, more informed decisions is like exponentially higher, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely where it's going. I think not even just in betting, but just in general across. I think we're going to see even more B2B, call it creators or marketing for companies. Curious, what other sports are you looking at or building, and what interests you? Obviously, basketball is global. Everyone loves it. You know, everyone plays it. What's appealing?
So basketball we love because, as you say, it's truly a global sport. Our second biggest audience segment in the world is the Philippines, where basketball is like their lifeblood. We ran some numbers last month and worked out that basically a piece of our content was seen by essentially every male adult Filipino basketball fan in the last month, which is pretty wild. But as it pertains to other sports, we now have football, ice hockey, and baseball live in market, which are good. We're sort of growing them quite quickly and learning a lot about how, going back to the content side, what works on basketball that doesn't work in those sports. And there are actually pretty marked differences. It's people watching from different areas, so on and so
Hmm.
forth. Our next main focus is soccer, or football, as they like to call it in Europe, which again is another one that we can add under, I'd say, like the global, the global string to our bow. And then golf. Golf is one that we're sort of fascinated by. It's golf is growing really fast, and we're starting to see some really interesting like content players emerge in golf that you know had good audiences a couple of years ago, but that have grown exponentially over the last few years. I think that golf's done a great job of appealing to younger audiences now, and there's good personalities in the space. So I'd say if we can get to the end of this year and we have 6 sports live that we're covering editorially and socially from an independent standpoint, then we've done a really good job on the pure media side.
Love that. Any other trends in sports you find interesting, whether they relate to you or not, or you're keeping a close eye on?
I think golf and hockey are the two that I would say, like from a numbers standpoint, are probably growing faster than benchmarked or outstripping expectations from an audience standpoint. Hockey's a really interesting one. I think that there's a lot more mainstream attention that's being paid to it. The Stanley Cup playoffs are awesome. It's phenomenal from like an entertainment standpoint. Then you have obviously the NFL and basketball, which are behemoths in their own right. I'm not sure. I'm keeping an eye on like alternate sports that are popping up. There's a lot of businesses in the US that are looking to try and get involved in those like second, third, fourth tier sports, even down to stuff like, card jitsu and random sort of like really alternate offerings that there seems to be an appetite for people, at least from a betting and gaming perspective. I don't know whether that speaks more to like the degeneracy of a lot of people who want to have action on, how fast a fly will crawl across a desk, right? As opposed to like, bigger
Right.
mainstream. But that's something we'll keep an eye on. We monitor that stuff sort of every week. So
Yeah. Last thing, how do you think of short form content versus long form? Obviously, a lot of yours is more on the shorter end, at least on your videos, and then you have the podcast is long form. But what is your thought process around that, or how do you view it?
yeah, I think long form is like a huge place for it. And I know YouTube rewards long form quality content creation. It's really expensive. Long form is the hardest to produce, and I think that the younger audiences get, the lower their attention span is. So you look at like retention data on people who are 12 to 20 compared to 25 up, and it's unbelievable. It's almost like ADD segments. like, um,
Oh, that's
so
crazy.
so short form is still the best from a like engagement standpoint in old school media metrics, but I'm a huge fan of long form. I'm a big like documentary guy, 15, 20 minute plus videos that deep dive topics. It's something that you need big budgets to be able to go and actually execute at the same level as your static image and short form stuff.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I've fallen between. I some weeks I'm like I can watch long form, and then
Yeah.
some weeks I'm like, yeah, and it's bad. Our attention spans aren't good
I think
anymore.
you and I probably sit on like the crux of the audience segments that like
Yeah,
above us is like very, very like long form oriented. Younger than us is like they literally cannot watch more than a 40-second video. Even like 30 seconds, like they're just it's
I
done.
know.
Doom
It's
scroll. Um,
yeah, be interesting to see where it goes. I think we'll learn like anything. It swings back and forth. I don't
Agreed.
think it's just like, oh, it's just going to keep going. No, I think it will sort of like season cycles. I think we'll see like fashion, right? We'll see long and form always have this little dance.
Yeah.
It's just we've never really seen it ever get this short form, which is
Yeah.
cool.
I think, and last point on that, I think is that, you know, honestly, a lot of it's dictated by the companies themselves.
Hmm.
YouTube basically dictates what you see and what you don't. If they want long form, if
Hmm.
they think long form is what's doing best for them at the time, that's all you're
Hmm.
going to get recommended. Shorts will die out, and that'll be that. If shorts are where all their ad spend is going and all their eyeballs are, long form will get sort of squeezed into a corner. So I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. Slaves to the algorithms.
Exactly right.
All right. Where can we learn more? Socials, websites. Where can everyone make sure they're following and just whether it's on the business side or they're just a fan and want to check out your content or your
Yes.
games as
So
they come.
yeah, so we'll share all the updates, I guess, around like product launches on our socials. Basketball Forever is our main social handle, and then we've got Football Forever, Hockey Forever, and Dugout Forever, which is our baseball vertical. They're the four that you can go and look at, where you'll probably see everything all in one. And then we have sort of web properties that are being built out for those three outside of basketball as we speak to, as we start sort of scaling up editorially.
Love it. Cool. Well, Nick, appreciate you coming on and sharing the insights, and look forward to seeing the next Barstool. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe is that the goal? What's the goal? You guys have like a goal of a company that's done it well?
So there we go. I think I'm really excited to see products live in market. Really, really intrigued to see how our audience actually goes and transacts and plays. I think the games are really, really fun. I think we have some really cool stuff there. So maybe like a mini clip for sports betting, with
Like that.
with a little bit of independent sort of media coverage in the background.
Love that.